At 5:40 in the morning, the USS Truxtun was threading the Strait of Hormuz for the first time in several weeks. The bridge was quiet, the morning watch was routine, and nothing on the scope was worth a second look. What the bridge crew didn't know was that an IRGC coastal missile battery near Bandar Abbas had been tracking the convoy since it entered the Gulf of Oman. At 5:41, every passive sensor on the Truxtun lit up simultaneously. 2 decks below the bridge, red emergency lighting snapped on and overlapping voices filled the room. This is the Combat Information Center, the CIC, a windowless space with no view of the sea where every fight on a destroyer is actually won or lost. An RC-135 rivet joint had been orbiting 50 miles south of the strait for the past 90 minutes, pulling encrypted IRGC communications the entire time. And right now, that traffic was spiking hard. The intelligence aircraft painted a wave of low-flying contacts coming off the Iranian coast. 11 tracks, all closing fast. The Tactical Action Officer, the TAO, a lieutenant who runs the fight from a chair in the middle of the CIC, was already on the net calling them out. Priority 1, Priority 2. The Mason had the same tracks. Both ships' Aegis systems were linked through cooperative engagement capability, letting the 2 destroyers fight as a single unit. Watchstanders ran through launch checklists with fingers hovering over panels. 40 seconds of voice communications compressed into pure motion. The first Standard Missile 2 screamed out of Cell 17 of Truxtun's forward vertical launch system. 32 cells forward of the bridge, 64 more aft. Each one a hole in the deck, loaded with the right weapon for the right threat. Then Cell 22 fired. Then the Mason joined from her own vertical launch bank. 6 interceptors in the air inside 15 seconds. Aegis doesn't have much of a reputation for being polite, and right now, she wasn't trying to be. 40 kilometers out, 2 cruise missiles came apart in flashes that popped on the surface horizon, visible from the bridge wing as fragments of Iranian guidance electronics rained into the Gulf in what looked like slow motion. First splash of the morning, and the CIC didn't have a second to mark it. That was the Standard Missile 2, the workhorse of Aegis air defense. Mach 3.5 closing speed, 90 miles of reach, roughly the distance from Boston to Hartford. The bread and butter missile every Burke-class destroyer fires more of than any other. Think of the missile magazine like a toolbox. The Standard Missile 2 is the 10mm socket. It fits most jobs. You've got a dozen of them, and you only dig deeper when something unusual rolls in. 11 tracks became 8. Then 4, then 2. Inland at the IRGC battery near Bandar Abbas, the commander watched his launch board. 0 hits registered. The destroyer was supposed to be juggling 60 inbound threats by now, unable to engage any of them long enough to matter. The convoy was unbroken. He keyed his radio to push the next wave anyway, but the radar picture wasn't getting cleaner. It was only getting worse. The E-2 Delta Hawkeye, orbiting at 25,000 feet, started calling slow movers from inland. 12 at first, then the count climbed past 30, and they were still launching. Shahed 136 one-way attack drones. Propeller-driven, 180 kilometers per hour, 50-kilogram warheads, and somebody had to deal with every single one of them. The Shahed 136 is what happens when someone takes a lawnmower engine, bolts it to a delta wing made of cheap composite material, straps a 50-kilo warhead to the nose, and tells it to fly itself into something for $25,000 a copy. 2,500 kilometers of range, the full length of California twice over. No sensor, no seeker, just GPS coordinates entered before launch and a one-way ticket. The point isn't that a single Shahed will sink a destroyer. The point is that Iran can build them faster than Raytheon can build interceptors to shoot them down. That's the math the IRGC commander was betting on that morning. Combat Air Patrol, call sign Gunslinger. Two Super Hornets from the Lincoln's Air Wing were already on station at 22,000 feet, pushing south to engage the drones at range. Every drone an F/A-18 takes out saves a destroyer and interceptor. The Masons TAO called again. North spur of the coast flying directly through Gunslinger's airspace. Gunslinger, scram south, Angels 35. The Hornets nosed over and broke station, climbing south out of the missile lane as fast as the F-414 engines would push them. Both pilots clearing the airspace they'd just been told to vacate. 3 seconds after the last fighter's tail cleared the corner, 2 Standard missiles punched out of the Mason's forward vertical launch system and threaded the now empty lane. Splash. What just happened on the radio is the cost of fighting from a destroyer with friendly aircraft overhead. Think of the airspace above the ship as a 4-lane highway. The destroyer's missiles roar up the fast lane at Mach 3.5, and the fighters cruise the slow lane below. 2 vehicles, 1 altitude, 1 narrow window. It doesn't work. The fighters take the off-ramp before the missile arrives, and the scram is fast, but the gap it creates is real. 50 kilometers inland, a Shahed launch crew was on its 43rd drone of the morning. Each tube took 90 seconds to reload. They'd been told to keep launching until the destroyer's screen broke. The screen hadn't broken, so they kept launching. While the Combat Air Patrol was scramming, 4 Shaheds slipped past the fighter screen and pushed inside 30 miles of the convoy. The Mason's forward vertical launch bank poked cell after cell, 4 missiles streaking out. 3 drones came apart at 20 miles in succession, but 1 kept coming. In the Mason's CIC, a sensor operator marked another Shahed splashed and flagged the leaker for close-in weapon system handoff. 3 evolved Sea Sparrows left in his bank. The evolved Sea Sparrow is the medium-range pitch hitter that quad packs 4 to a cell, so a destroyer can carry 4 times the magazine when the threat is small and close. The Standard Missile 2 reaches Atlanta from New York. The evolved Sea Sparrow reaches the next neighborhood over. The count from the E-2 Delta was still climbing. The 4th Shahed cleared 20 miles and kept coming. The white dome amidships screamed to life, found the drone, and ripped a 1-second burst. The drone disintegrated 1,400 yards out. Close enough that the gunners mate at the port lookout station could see fragments hit the water. What just lit up the sky was the Phalanx Block 1 Bravo, a 20mm Vulcan cannon stuffed inside a dome shaped like something out of a science fiction film, putting out 4,500 rounds a minute with its own radar built directly on top. It's the destroyer's last resort. When the Standard Missile 2 and the evolved Sea Sparrow both miss, Phalanx is what stops the drone from punching a hole in your hull at 1,400 yards. On the Truxton's bridge, the surface picture finally caught up. 6 fast attack craft, range 20,000 yards, closing at 50 knots. The captain had a choice. He could come right 30 degrees to put his best radar face on the boats, but that move would blind the north side of his radar to the cruise missile lane. He picked the missiles. The boats stayed outside the optimal gun arc, and that was the cost of choosing the threat that could sink the ship over the one that could only scratch the paint. If you look at the 4 flat panels mounted at the corners of the Truxton superstructure, you understand why a destroyer's radar isn't a single antenna. It's 4, each panel covering its own slice of the sky. No moving dish, no rotating sweep, no blind spots between rotations. Just 4 eyes that never blink, each one tracking everything in its quadrant simultaneously, and any panel can hand off a track to the others without losing a millisecond.
Right now, the system was juggling cruise missiles, drones, fast attack boats, and friendly fighters all at once. Turn the ship, and one of those trucks gets the weakest face. That was the captain's trade-off. The lead fast attack craft closed inside 4,000 yards, into rocket range. 3 rockets jumped off the rail. 2 missed long. One hit the water 200 meters of the Truxton's starboard quarter. The boat's gunner opened up with a 12.7mm heavy machine gun. A 25mm mount on the Truxton's starboard beam finally found the angle and answered. Rounds walking past the boat's bow at 175 a minute. The Iranian boat jinked east. The commander's 3 rockets were spent. The Truxton hadn't even noticed him personally. Every gun visible on her port side was still pointed at the cruise missile lane. He was throwing a 12.7 at the destroyer while she was busy with what could actually sink her.
Like throwing pebbles at someone who's currently wrestling a bear. He knew they were there. He just had bigger problems. That's the Mark 38, the destroyer's pocket knife. A single 25mm chain gun bolted to each beam. Stabilized so it shoots straight in any sea state. Remote operated. Thermal sights for night work. 175 rounds per minute. Lethal out to 2,500 meters. Perfect for what's right next to you. Useless for what's 100 miles out, which is fine because everything past 100 miles belongs to the radar and the vertical launch system anyway. The Mason's close-in weapon system burned another Shahed. The round count ticked further down. The Truxton came right 15 degrees, swinging her starboard radar onto a fresh Noor inbound from the northwest, and the chain gun lost the fast attack boat as the bearings changed. The boat circled back. The captain had the same choice all over again. A stalemate inside a missile fight. Then the commander looked at his radar warning display. The sky above the destroyers was clear for the first time in 20 minutes. The cover was gone. Gunslinger pushed back in at standoff range. The Shahed wave was still arriving in trickles every 90 seconds or so, leaking out of scattered sights inland. Gunslinger 1 fired. An AIM-9X tore off the wingtip rail, and the Shahed turned into a debris cloud at 18 miles. Gunslinger 2 took the next 2 with AIM-120 AMRAAMs, advanced medium-range air-to-air missiles, radar-guided, fire and forget. One after another came apart at standoff distance, while the magazines held steady. On the lead fast attack craft, the commander's radio had been mostly silent. He'd been sitting at 4,000 yards from the Truxton for 90 minutes, while the chain gun walked another burst across his bow. He looked east. Open water back toward Keshem Island. He keyed the radio. The other 5 boats turned with him. He pushed the throttles up to 96 kilometers per hour. The chain gun fired after him, but the geometry was wrong. Rounds fell short. The boats disappeared into the haze to the northeast at full power. The Truxton's CIC was quiet for the first time in 47 minutes. Somewhere in CENTCOM forward, a watch officer had just tallied the bill. Iran spent 11 cruise missiles, 43 attack drones, and 6 fast attack craft on 2 destroyers. Roughly $10 million in missiles and drones gone. And got nothing back but empty ocean and an accounting problem the IRGC procurement office would have a hard time explaining to anyone with a calculator. The convoy was through the choke point. The boats were gone but not destroyed. In 2 hours, the next 2 merchants on the schedule would be running the same water, and the commander and his 5 surviving boats knew exactly where they'd be. What the IRGC commander didn't know yet was that an RC-135 had been listening to his retreat the entire way home. At 0712, the lead fast attack craft keyed an encrypted radio to arrange a rendezvous with another IRGC unit on shore. The Boeing 707
recorded the transmission, pinpointed it to within 200 meters by timing how long the signal took to reach multiple antennas spaced along its fuselage, and pushed coordinates onto Link 16. What put a dot on the map was the antenna array bolted to the RC-135, roughly 30 separate receivers tuned across the radio spectrum, plus Farsi linguists in the cabin who could identify an IRGC unit by the lieutenant's regional accent. The Iranians use encrypted radios. The 707 reads every message and writes down the phone number. Iran has known about this capability since the 1970s and still uses encrypted radios anyway, because the alternative is no radio at all. An MQ-9 Reaper at 28,000 feet swung over the coordinates, and 26 minutes later it was overhead, an inlet on the southeast coast of Keshm Island. 6 fast attack craft tied up against a concrete pier, crews dumping spent rocket pods over the side, pickup trucks pulling up with crates. The Reaper operator, in a darkened ground control station at Creech Air Force Base in Nevada, put the forward-looking infrared sensor onto the nearest crate. Tube-shaped, olive drab. The crate next to it had stenciled markings the analyst recognized in 4 seconds. Masood 2. The boats weren't just rearming with rockets and ammunition. They were receiving man-portable air defense systems, shoulder-launched surface-to-air missiles built specifically for shooting helicopters out of the sky. A 200-foot ridge stood between the cove and the strait, and to reach it, helicopters would have to cross a coastal anti-aircraft belt that had been active since dawn. Every gun and surface-to-air missile site in that belt was online, watching the sky for whatever came over the horizon next. The strike package began forming up. 2 F/A-18 Super Hornets carrying GBU-38s, a pair of A-10 Charlie Warthogs with full GAU-8 magazines and GBU-12 paveways, 2 EA-18 Golf Growlers with ALQ-249 pods and AGM-88s on the wing pylons. Bombs for bunkers, the gun for the gun pits, jammers for whatever Iranian radar got brave. Time on target, 0834. At 14 miles out, the lead Growler pilot flipped a switch and a pod under his wing woke up. Every radar in the anti-aircraft belt that had been looking outward went blind in a blizzard of electronic noise. Hanging under the Growler's wing is the AN/ALQ-249 Next Generation Jammer. Fresh from replacing the 40-year-old ALQ-99, the Navy had still been flying on Growlers 2 years earlier. Same concept as every jammer since the Second World War. Drown the radar in noise. What's different is gallium nitride and active electronically scanned array technology crammed into a jammer pod. More power and tighter beams than the old system ever managed. Picture someone shining a floodlight directly into a security camera. The camera still works, the lens is fine, but all it sees is white. The radars were still there, they just couldn't see anything useful anymore. But optical anti-aircraft artillery doesn't need radar. 3 ZU-23-2 emplacements were dug into the ridge above the cove. Twin-barreled 23mm towed mounts aimed through iron sights, which is military language for just look at the thing and shoot. Effective out to 2,500 meters, exactly where the A-10s had to fly to use their guns. The lead A-10 came in low over the ridgeline at 280 knots, nose down, wings level. He tipped into the gun run. The cannon cut loose at 3,900 rounds a minute, and the first ZU-23 emplacement disintegrated in under 2 seconds. He broke left. His wingman came in on the second mount. The third ZU-23 crew was already running for the rocks when his rounds took out their gun.
That noise was the GAU-8 Avenger, a 7-barrel rotary cannon the A-10 was literally built around. General Electric designed the gun. Fairchild Republic designed an airplane that could carry it. Most aircraft carry weapons. The A-10 is a weapon that carries an airplane. Like building a house around a really nice couch. The shells are 30mm depleted uranium penetrators, heavy enough to punch through tank-top armor, which means against a towed gun emplacement, the math isn't even close. A mobile surface-to-air missile hiding deeper in the cliffs lit up. A Tor M1, a Russian-built short-range system, the kind that has eaten Western aircraft over Syria, almost certainly a survivor of previous strikes in the region, moved here when the air defense belt was reconstituted. Its tracking radar locked onto the lead A-10. A missile dropped off the Growler's pylon, lit its rocket motor, and accelerated past Mach 3. The Tor operator saw the launch warning on his radar warning receiver and shut down his radar. 41 seconds too late. The warhead burst 8 meters above the launcher. That was the AGM-88 HARM, the high-speed anti-radiation missile, a radar's worst nightmare. Once it has your frequency, going dark doesn't help. It already memorized where you were before you switched off, and inertial guidance handles the rest of the flight. The lead F/A-18 released a GBU-38, a 500-pound joint direct attack munition, onto the Tor's reload truck 100 meters down the access road. Secondary explosions rippled through the ammunition load. That 500-pound weapon is the JDAM, a dumb bomb with a $25,000 GPS guidance kit that turns Vietnam-era iron into a weapon that lands in the same parking space every time. It's the Pentagon's most cost-effective trick. Take a bomb the Air Force already owns by the warehouse load, bolt a tail kit on the back, and call it precision. The cove was open. Every gun in the belt was destroyed, smoking, or hiding. The suppression of enemy air defenses had taken 31 minutes from first jamming to last bomb. The IRGC crews had used every minute of it. 2 AH-64 Echo Apaches, forward deployed to the UAE since March, crossed the Iranian coast 18 minutes after the last A-10 climbed out to the east. An MH-60 Romeo Seahawk of the Truxton's flight deck held offshore in case any boat ran. The Apaches dropped to 200 feet over the ridge. The radar disk above the rotor head swept the cove. Six contacts classified themselves on the tactical display in under 2 seconds, before the pilot's eyes had found them visually. On the lead fast attack craft, the commander had the rotor blades a bit before the threat warning. He'd been watching the smoke columns rising from the anti-aircraft belt for the past 12 minutes. He knew this was coming. He keyed his radio one last time and shouted to his gunner. The man-portable air defense system was already on the deck. The lead Apache committed on the lead boat at 5.5 kilometers. The AGM-114 Lima Longbow Hellfire dropped off the rail and lit its motor. Fire and forget. The Apache turned away the instant the missile's fins cleared the launcher. At the same moment on the boat below, the gunner shouldered the man-portable launcher. The seeker picked up the Apache's engine heat almost immediately. The tone in his ear shifted to a steady warble, and he squeezed the trigger. The launch flare flashed, bright enough to see from a kilometer away. 2 missiles were now in the air, headed in opposite directions. But here's what nobody at CENTCOM had told the Apache crews until 20 minutes before takeoff. The man-portable missiles in those crates weren't the type they were marked as. The Seekers were a generation newer, 2-color infrared with a logic gate trained specifically to reject magnesium flares. The Iranians had been waiting for a helicopter strike for months. They'd sourced the upgrade through a third party and stenciled the crates incorrectly on purpose. The Apache's flare dispenser fired automatically.
A cloud of white-hot magnesium decoys boiled off the airframe. The seeker broke lock on the engine, found a brighter heat source, and followed it away from the helicopter. The missile corkscrewed into the decoys and detonated 90 meters off the right side. The crew felt the concussion through the pedals. The Apache kept flying. The Hellfire hit the lead fast attack craft and the warhead detonated at the waterline. The boat folded in half and went under in 11 seconds. What just folded a 25-ton fast attack craft is the AGM-114 Lima Longbow, 49 kilograms of missile carrying a 9-kilogram shaped charge warhead. 8 kilometers of reach, riding a millimeter-wave radar seeker that paints its own target instead of waiting for the helicopter to illuminate it with a laser. Picture the Apache as someone who throws a dart and then walks out of the room before it hits the board. By the time the boat saw the launch, the helicopter was already behind the ridge. 3 systems had just saved the Apache in 1.2 seconds end-to-end. The common missile warning system on the tail boom caught the launch plume. The infrared countermeasure lamp strobed a heat source brighter and more intense than the engines. Flares fired as a backup layer. Same logic as a magician's misdirection. Wave something bright with your left hand while your right hand disappears. The missile chased the bright thing, and the helicopter was already gone. First boat down. 3 other boats now had man-portable launchers coming up. The second Apache committed on the fast attack craft closest to shore. Hellfire away! Boat gone. The remaining 4 scattered. 3 running for open water at full throttle, 1 pushing back toward the cove for whatever cover the burning anti-aircraft emplacement still offered. Another shoulder-launched missile launched from the boat heading north. The lead Apache jinked hard right and dispensed a fresh flare salvo. The missile took the fire. Another close call. The Apache rolled back onto the boat, now too close for the Hellfire's minimum arming distance, and the chain gun in the chin turret came alive. 1 second burst. The boat caught fire amidships. 2-second burst. It came apart. That was the M230 chain gun in the Apache's chin turret. 1,200 rounds of 30mm high-explosive dual-purpose ammunition at 625 rounds a minute, slaved to the gunner's helmet. 2 seconds of trigger time is generous. The lead Apache banked back across the cove. The cove-bound fast attack craft was trying to nose against the pier for cover from the burning emplacements above. Hellfire. The second one off the lead Apache's rails this engagement. It landed square on the engine compartment. The boats split against the concrete. 2 boats remaining, both running for open water at full throttle. The second Apache dropped in pursuit from the cove side. The Seahawk that had been holding offshore this entire time rolled in from the open water angle. The boats were boxed. Apache behind them, Seahawk in front. The Seahawk's Hellfire took the lead boat at 4 kilometers. The trailing boat tried to break south at full power, but the second Apache's chain gun found it. Rounds walking across the engine compartment until she lost power and started burning. 6 boats. 6 down. The cove behind them was still smoking from the suppression strike. The 2 Apaches were flying with flare residue streaked along their fuselages, and the missile fragment lodged in the lead aircraft's right stub wing. Not enough to bring her down, just enough to give the maintenance officer at Al Dhafra a few pointed questions when she landed. The lead Apache climbed out to the east, turning back toward the UAE. Behind her, the next 2 American-flagged merchants were already pushing into the strait 12 miles south of Bandar Abbas. The lane was open. The IRGC had said the strait was closed. The merchants didn't get the memo. There's something worth sitting with here.
The IRGC commander ran a sophisticated, layered operation.
11 cruise missiles, 43 drones, 6 fast attack craft, a hidden anti-aircraft belt, and man-portable missiles with upgraded seekers deliberately mislabeled. He had done his homework. He had planned for the helicopter strike. He had sourced better weapons through back channels and disguised them. And it still wasn't enough. But not by the margin you might expect. One missile fragment in a stab wing, 1,400 yards between a phalanx burst and a hull breach, a 2-second lag on a radar shutdown. The margins in this kind of fight are not comfortable. They never are. And the question of whether those margins hold the next time, when the crates are labeled correctly from the start, is one that probably keeps more than a few people in quiet rooms up at night.